Hello and welcome back to the TurboWare channel. I hope you are doing well, and I also hope you will enjoy today's topic, which is going to be the diesel engine. A diesel engine is basically an alternative to the petrol engine. It is also an internal combustion engine, and if we are talking about four-stroke engines, it runs really similar to a petrol engine. In comparison to petrol engine, diesel engines are more efficient, have usually higher torque, a much better fuel economy. In this video, we will look into the secrets of diesel engines and explain how are they achieving all the mentioned benefits. Diesel engines were invented by Rudolf Diesel, a German inventor, and his aim was to create a more efficient engine compared to petrol engines, and he also wanted to create an engine which can run on biofuels. His first successful engine was created in 1897. Actually, this engine still exists as far as I'm aware. Its name is Motor 250-400, and the first time when it was showcased to the audience, it was running on peanut oil. To understand the secrets of diesel engines, first of all, we need to explain how does a four-stroke internal combustion engine works. So 4 strokes means there are 4 processes for a complete work cycle. The first of these is the intake, when the cylinder sucks in air and fuel. The second one is compression, where this air-fuel mixture is compressed. The third one is combustion or power, when the mixture is ignited and the piston is pushed down so it rotates the crankshaft. And the last step is the exhaust, when with the upward motion of the piston, the gases are expelled basically from the piston. After this, the intake follows, and then the combustion, and so on and so on. The main difference between a petrol and diesel engine happens in the second and third phase. The compression rate of a diesel engine is much higher than the compression rate of a petrol engine. We are talking 10 to 1 for a petrol engine and 18 to 1 all the way to 22 to 1 for a diesel engine. The compression is basically by how much is the air-fuel mixture compressed before it is ignited. So if you have a 10 to 1 compression ratio, it means that if you have 10 units of the air-fuel mixture, it's compressed to a volume of 1 before it gets ignited. A higher compression ratio means more power, a more efficient burn. So this way, a car or an engine with a higher compression ratio is much more efficient. The next difference between a petrol and diesel engine is in the third phase, which is the ignition or power phase. For a petrol engine, as you are probably aware, you need a spark plug to ignite the fuel-air mixture, but for the diesel engine, this is not needed. For a diesel engine, to have ignition, you only need to have a large enough compression ratio, because if we compress gases, they heat up, and then after a certain point, we get combustion. You may ask yourself, if this is this simple, why aren't petrol engines made the way diesel engines are, and we wouldn't need to have 2 different engine types? This is a good question, and it was tried in the past. And even now, for example, Mazda is trying to increase the compression ratio of petrol engines, but it is not that simple. The secret lies in the fuel. Petrol is much more volatile than diesel, and it also has a lower energy ratio. For the same amount of petrol, you get less energy than if you have the same amount of diesel, but the main problem is the volatility. If you compress petrol all the way to 12 to 1 or 21 to 1, you would get a knock. A knock is basically a premature ignition of the fuel-air mixture, and if you have a knock, it can damage the engine, it of course decreases efficiency, and it also increases emissions as far as I'm aware. Knock can be countered to a certain limit by more premium fuel or higher octane fuel, and in the past leaded fuel was actually invented to counter knock, but for everyday usage the highest compression ratio for petrol engines is around 12 to 1. Mazda has some special engines with higher compression ratios. Diesel engines can have compression ratio of 18 to 1, even 22 to 1. This can be achieved thanks to the fuel they use, diesel, which is much less volatile than petrol, so it can be compressed much more without getting a knock. There are of course other differences between petrol and diesel engines too. First of all, diesel engines needs to be built much more robust. This is thanks to the higher compression ratio, so the engine components, connecting rods, engine block, pistons need to be sturdier, which result theoretically in a higher reliability. Sometimes the Volkswagen Group can counter this, and also the throttling of the two engines is different. For a petrol engine, when you apply throttle, you basically change the air fuel mixture getting into the engine. You reduce the air, and the engine then reduces the amount of fuel which is injected into the engine. With carburetors, it was the same. You basically reduce the amount of air fuel mixture getting into the engine. With diesel engines, the amount of air sucked in is always the same. You only play with the amount of fuel injected into the cylinders. This also results in a problem connected with diesel engines. This is the so-called runaway diesel. This occurs when something else gets into the cylinder which can burn. It's usually motor oil from the turbocharger. Modern diesel engines are nearly always turbocharged. It's really easy to increase the performance of the diesel engine with a turbocharger. So basically when oil enters the combustion chamber, the diesel engine will happily burn it and use it as fuel, and it will rev up. Thanks to the higher revs, the oil pump speed will increase, the turbo will run quicker, and more oil is getting into the engine until the point when the engine basically explodes. You can turn off the ignition, it won't change anything because the engine is not running on the diesel fuel but on the engine oil. Usually the only thing which can stop a runaway diesel is to clog the air intake. Thanks to the higher compression ratio and higher efficiency, diesel engines are much more fuel efficient, around 20 to 35%, and they also have much higher torque, especially in the low ends. For this reason, diesel engines are popular worldwide by truckers. Usually trucks and vans are with diesel engines. Also, diesel engines are used by ships because efficiency is key in shipping, and also trains are using diesel engines. Diesel engines are also used in passenger cars, especially in Europe, where the diesel engine had its golden age basically from the end of the 19th all the way up to 2017. And during this golden age, here in Europe, we put a diesel in everything, all the way from small city cars to huge luxury SUVs. Basically, everything had a diesel in it, if you wanted it or not. But nowadays, diesels are less popular. And because I started to mention the positives and negatives of diesel engines, let's make a summary. The positives of diesel engines are higher efficiency, much better low-end torque, higher durability of the engine thanks to more durable parts, flexibility with fueling. This was more the case with older technologies, but in the past, diesel engines were run even on used frying oil. Also, diesel engines have lower CO2 emissions thanks to the better burn in the cylinder. But of course, there are some negatives too. First of all, probably the biggest negative of diesel engines, especially in nowadays green future, is the higher nitrogen oxide emissions. To combat this, diesel engines are equipped with much more sophisticated and complicated systems to reduce emissions when compared to petrol engines. Among these, we can mention the EGR system, catalytic converters, AdBlue additive, which all are meant to decrease the nitrogen oxide emissions. Also, more particles exit the exhaust of diesel cars. For this reason, diesel engines have DPF filters, and these DPF filters cause diesel engines to die in city usage much more quickly than regular petrol cars. Another negative of diesel engines is higher rattling and higher noise and vibration when compared to petrol engines. Also, thanks to the higher efficiency, they are slower to heat up. This can be inconvenient in the winter. Another negative, which mainly concerns people living in colder climates and who use diesel cars, is the fact that diesel in temperatures around minus 12, minus 15 degrees Celsius can be gelatinous. This means a much harder cold starts and rougher idle of the engine. There is still a myth regarding World War II that the German tanks were useless in the winter and they froze because they had petrol engines, and the Soviet T-34s were running around happily in the cold. Well, they used diesel engines in their tanks, and if they wanted to start them in minus 30 or 40, they needed to lit a fire under them to heat up the engine oil, and also the fuel. So a quick sum up of the negatives and positives of diesel engines. On the plus side, we have higher efficiency, much better fuel economy, and lower CO2 emissions. On the minus side, we have more nitrogen oxides, we have higher sensitivity to cold, and also much more complicated emission systems. The characteristics of diesel engines make them the ideal choice for trucks, heavy machinery, also for ships, and for military application. They can also be useful in passenger cars, and the golden age in Europe was thanks to the much better fuel economy. But if you are only driving around the city or doing short trips, diesel engine is not really the ideal choice for you. In the next part of the video, there will be some clips of characteristic diesel engines from Europe and the USA, and I hope you enjoyed this short summary and have a nice day.